Thank you to the Indian American Muslim Council for inviting me to this discussion. It's my privilege to be here. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the enforced disappearance, abduction, torture, and ultimately custodial killing of the human rights defender Jaswant Singh Kalra from Punjab, who was ultimately eliminated for his work to investigate and expose enforced disappearances ending in secret mass cremations. Our work at Ensaaf over a decade and a half was inspired by his work and his example. And it's also the anniversary of over a 25-year-old case, which is known as the Punjab mass cremations case. And I want to unpack this case to illustrate judicial impunity for gross human rights violations. Jaswant Singh Kalra brought this issue of secret cremations to the attention of the Punjab and Haryana High Court with credible allegations based on municipal cremation ground records that Punjab police had been secretly cremating thousands of bodies by declaring them unidentified. So Jaswant Singh Kalra was asking the court to identify who these unidentified secret cremation victims are, and the High Court's response was that only the next of kin of these unidentified individuals have standing to move forward, in this petition. Subsequently, Jaswant Singh Kalra was abducted and disappeared by a hit squad organized by former Punjab DGP KPS Gill and Ajit Singh Sandhu. And his family then also petitioned the Supreme Court regarding his allegations, mass cremations, and forced disappearances and extrajudicial executions. The Supreme Court delegated its authority to investigate this issue of mass cremations to India's National Human Rights Commission. However, over a decade and a half of proceedings before the National Human Rights Commission, it went out of its way to abandon the mandate that it was given by India's National Supreme Court. Jaswant Singh Kalra and his family and other petitioners in this case presented clear evidence that mass cremations were not limited just to Amritsar district, that they in fact occurred throughout Punjab's, at that time, 17 districts. Petitioners further presented evidence that cremations were not the only manner in which security forces disposed of bodies, that they also dismembered and buried these bodies and destroyed the evidence of their crimes by dumping bodies in rivers and canals and other waterways of Punjab. The petitioners were arguing that the issue is not how is the body disposed of, but rather how did this individual become a body that ended up in the hands of Punjab police, while the commission was saying is that it had no interest in determining how that individual came to die, but rather was simply interested in determining whether or not Punjab police invited the next of kin to the cremation prior to the cremation occurring. In nearly 2 decades of proceedings, to date, it has yet to call a single victim to testify about their experiences. And it's important to understand the precedent that was set here, because this is a clear example of how the judiciary has worked. And this example in Punjab is not unique, unfortunately. India has been plagued by atrocity crimes, by crimes against humanity. In Punjab, you have mass cremations. In Kashmir, you have mass graves. In Nagaland and Chhattisgarh, you've had whole villages that have been razed to the ground. And in each instance, the response of the judiciary has been to overlook the widespread and systematic aspect of these abuses. As I mentioned, we've documented and publicly released over 5,000 incidences of enforced disappearances and unlawful killing. there's been an equal documentation of judicial impunity for these widespread and systematic crimes. We know that officers in Punjab went on to replicate their abusive practices in other places, such as Kashmir, but we also see the judiciary replicating their abusive practices. Whether we're talking about the failure of the judiciary and the various commissions in the 84 pogroms context against Sikhs, whether we're talking about the 2002 genocidal pogroms, whether we're talking about mass graves in Kashmir, the judiciary has deliberately turned a blind eye to widespread and systematic abuses, and this has led to a black hole, a vacuum in the development of the law concerning not only individualized examinations of disappearances and unlawful killings, but also, the policies, practices, and the widespread and systematic manner in which these abuses unfold. And we also know that India is not, a party to certain optional protocols that would give international mechanisms oversight of these types of practices. And this strikes at the very foundation of India's democracy, where wholesale thousands of people, tens of thousands of people can be disappeared and killed, yet there's no acknowledgement of the systematic nature of these abuses by India's judiciary.